Okay, so let me just make sure I'm always confused about this. Just a second. Okay, so today I will talk about three architects that were born on the same day, meaning today, I mean the 8th of November. Not too very different. I mean, one of them is very different from the other two, but the other two do have something in common. And you'll see the similarities, but also the differences. So I began with Gaetano Pesce. I hope I pronounce his name well. To my shame, I do not know Italian. I should have known, but I don't, and I'm rather embarrassed. Anyway, he today he's 81 years old, and he's a very interesting architect and designer, very prolific, but very unconventional because he crosses the borders between design, architecture, theater, fine arts, and so on. And he does it in a very well convincing but also perplexing way because he's a complex artist. He is not at all commercial. That's why he didn't build too much, but he created a vast amount of works, mainly artworks, designs, and he built a little bit, but not as probably would have liked. So this is the man. I mean, a fragment of his face. Now you see a little more, and I believe, although he is an architect who appears to have some kind of a joie de vivre, that he has a dark side, and this can be seen in his earlier artworks from the 70s or even 60s. He's capable, I think, to see the hidden, even the tragic side of life, but also to kind of negotiate with that dark side in sometimes in baroque ways, other times in some kind of morbid baroque, if I can say so. Other times he's colorfully, flamboyant. You'll see. So he is an Italian architect and a design pioneer of the 20th century. Gaetano Pesce was born in La Spezia in 1939, and he grew up in Padua and Florence. I'm sorry. During his 50-year career, Mr. Pesce has worked as an architect, urban planner, and industrial designer. Well, strangely, they don't mention his artistic output because most of the other functions are somehow secondary to his artistic output. But anyway, this is a text I found about him. His outlook is considered broad and humanistic, and his work is characterized by an inventive use of color and materials, asserting connections between the individual and society through art, architecture, and design to reappraise mid-20th century modern life. He studied architecture at the University of Venice with such notable teachers as Carlos Scarpa and Ernesto Rogers. Between 1958 and 1963, Gaetano Pesce participated in Gruppo N, an early collective concerned with programmed art patterned after the Bauhaus. Since the 1960s, Gaetano Pesce has been known to relate art to the design of interiors, products, and architecture. The New York Times critic Herbert Muchon described Mr. Pesce as the architectural equivalent of a brainstorm. Maybe you noticed, I mean, you've heard that he studied with Carlos Scarpa. I don't know if you know, but Carlos Scarpa didn't teach architecture at the University of Venice. He actually taught interior architecture because he didn't have a diploma. So he was only hired by the interior, architecture school. I'm talking about, the other great architect of the 20th century, second half of the 20th century, the first one being Louis Kahn. This is how life is. Anyway, so during his career that spans 4 decades with commissions in architecture, urban planning, interior exhibition, and industrial design, Gaetano Pesce, the architect and designer, has conceived public and private projects in the United States, Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Well, this sounds a little better than what it actually happened. He built very little. Anyway, in all his work, he expresses his guiding principle that modernism is less a style than a method for interpreting the present and hinting at the future in which individuality is preserved and celebrated. He taught architecture at the l'Institut d'Architecture et d'Études Urbaines in Strasbourg in France for 28 years, at the Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, at the Domus Academy in Milan, at the Polytechnic of Hong Kong, at the Architectural School of Sao Paulo, and at the Cooper Union in New York City, where he has made his home since 1980, after living in Venice, London, Helsinki, and Paris. Okay, so I'll begin by showing some drawings. Well, that's how they appear on his website as drawings, but they're actually something else. Hybrid forms of art where he combines, various arts, various materials, and various forms of fabrication. You'll see some of them. A self-portrait from 1983 in polychrome urethane. This is it. Well, I guess that could be him. And he's not displaying himself. He's not portraying himself in necessarily flattering ways, but this is actually a quality, I think. And I think his perceptions vis-a-vis the human being and human life are colored by ambivalences, by maybe even skepticism. So his perceptions, as they are illustrated through his art, do not testify about a man who naively is, believing in everything. Anyway, so this is an artwork done by him. You'll see many actually. He's combining various materials and various forms, abstract and figurative. I think his art shows a certain disbelief in a naive form of idealism, but is highly original. Omaggio a tutte le Madonne del mondo, or homage to all the women of the world. From 2006, this is 16. This is the newest artworks that he did, and you can see even this fact that this is not supposed to be hanged on the wall, but is in front of the wall and is kind of like a movable object that you can situate yourself either in front of it or behind it, and so on. Transparency, also from 2016. There is a so-called pop side in his art, and close to at times, maybe dangerously close to, pop art even some form of advertising, but his skepticism, I think, makes him more complex, and it's hard to know exactly where he stands. Um, on the other hand, I see a relationship with religious themes, here and in the title of the previous one with a Madonna, and this difficult difficult meeting between the religious and the commercial creates something a little bit unsettling for me, at least. I mean, you see the silhouette of the crucified here is rather, sensual, considering the gravity of the subject. Anyway, Donna con titolo, a detail. So he's, of course, not the first artist to be obsessed by, the mystery of nativity and the complexity and the beauty of the feminine. Well, his art, I think, is very original, and some might think he's a little bit unserious, but I wouldn't say so. I think he's expressing his puzzlement vis-a-vis life, I think. And but these artistic objects, because that's what they are, I think they are convincing as art for our time. Even the fact that he problematizes the frame, you see, the work is not placidly framed. It is connected with these wires to the frame, but there is a distinction between the frame and the edge of the artwork per se. So I think this represents a disbelief in a linear, predictable relationship between the frame and the artwork that is framed. A moment of crisis, I would say. These artistic objects, they are well crafted, but they are not pretentious. They are not, they somehow are able to negotiate between, the sacrality of the art object and something that is against it. So I guess he's trying to say, neither art is first and life is, long and life is short, nor vice versa. So the relationship between art and life in the work of Gaetano Pesce, I think, is expressed with a certain ambivalence. Also, it's interesting that he combines, hand lettering with, rather complex and sophisticated use of various materials. Some of them, rather, modern or contemporary or industrial or even technological. Now we go to some designs by him, but here again, the frontier between drawing and design and artwork is very, very thin. In the Terminazione Elastica, 1965, metal, wood, and magnet. He was searching for himself, so to speak, at that early time, 1965. He was not too old at that time, of course. Now, an ashtray from 1969, plaster, enamel, and iron. This is, not a very optimistic ashtray. At that time, he was exploring the presence of blood with a human either face or in this case the hand, and I would say, this expresses his anxiety in a certain way vis-a-vis, even the human condition in general. You see the same thing here. The presence of blood is certainly evoking a moment of anguish. The same here. That blood is animating in a disturbing way the artwork. I mean, there is a flower on the right side, but that's the flower of illusion. But the only true color here is the color of the blood. This is an interesting lamp, quite large, Moloch lamp from 1970. You'll also see lamps about by the architect. Third one we'll talk about today, Lucchi, Michele de Lucchi. You see, if you change the dimensions of something, of anything, beyond the so-called normality, you arrive at surreal situations, like here. I mean, there is anguish in his art. It's obvious, and so despite the fact that you might think that he is kind of a happy-go-lucky designer or artist or architect, no, there is anguish. I mean, it's so obvious even in this artwork. Now, some of his designs are a little bit, burlesque for my taste. But he has ways to escape easy, perceptions or easy categorizations. The new domestic landscape in Italy. This was a show done at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, where he crossed the frontiers, the barriers between design, art, theater, architecture, and so on. So maybe Herbert Muchom, the architecture critic of the New York Times, was correct. He is the equivalent of a brainstorm, or his architecture is the equivalent of a brainstorm, because of the fact that he tries so many things in such varied ways. But you see, there is the geometry the geometry of architecture, but then is the disturbance coming from something very primal and visceral and organic and in a dark way. I mean, the architecture seems to be, quite sure of itself, rather kind of symmetrical, organized, clear cut, and so on. But look at what is happening within the architectural context, is the human drama, is the life that we all have, which is less serene and less geometrical and and less ordered. Okay, Golgotha, Suite, 1972. Look, again, lots of materials, bricks of glass, foam and polyester resin, fiberglass and polyester resin, Casina arc table, bricks of glass, foam and polyester resin. Anyway, it's a theater, it's a stage design, it's a funambulesque environment that he created, where again he crossed the frontiers between design, art, and theater. Interesting chairs, it is as if the chair became, at least in part, the person that sits on it. Rags and natural rubber. There is a touch of arte povera too in his work, his artistic work. Le futur est peut-être passé. The future is perhaps obsolete, or it passed already. A meditation on the relationship between what we call the past and what we call the future. I don't know exactly what the mechanism of interpretation is supposed to do here, but I like the theater of this piece that I see. He's a thinker using the artistic means and methods to express his thoughts and, of course, his emotions, his feelings. He likes sofas. He designed several sofas. This one is less unpredictable, but he's exploring the theme of the seats, of the sittings in both Baroque and burlesque ways. I imagine they are quite comfortable though. Anyway, portrait chair, where the chair becomes, the face of the one who, might sit there without actually doing it. But the truth is, a chair does say something about the personality of, if not the one who sits on it, but the one who actually made it. This is an interesting chair, and you'll see in the next few pictures why, beyond what you already see. But look, you can adapt the backing to this this position, so to speak, where you can hide away sitting on the chair, by using the wings that malleable backing to do something like this. San Sebastiano cabinet, of course, it is a clear reference to the saint and the piercing nails in his body. But here he pierced the cabinet. Again, the religious theme shows up here and there in his work. And if it is not considered sacrilegious, you could actually use those nails to hang your, coat or whatever from them. So, the cabinet is functioning with its interior, but it could also function like a tree destined for hanging, clothes or other things, towels or whatever from these. But again, the reference to San Sebastian might complicate matters a little bit. A seaweed chair from 1991. Tree lamp. It is, let's see the materials, papier-mâché, gouache, and shellac. I think it's a very personal, designed object. But architects are usually, taught in a very conformist way. And, very rarely we have an architect who allows himself or herself to work in this way as Gaetano Pesce. I mean, here he's free from any influence that education might have had on him. And for this, I think he's to be admired. Architecture. You'll see some architectural works by him. To my knowledge, he only built one large building in Japan. Otherwise, he participated in architectural competitions, which he probably didn't win. Anyway, you'll see his works. Casa Elastica from 1963. I don't know very well what's going on here. I only discovered two pictures about this this project from when he was, still very young. But the theme of elasticity, I think, is a valuable one and a valid one for architecture. Friedrich Kiesler also worked with elasticity in architecture. But in the case of Gaetano Pesce, I don't think I didn't find any other work referring explicitly to elasticity or, whatever he might have had in mind using this word. But it is true, we see versatility. And again, Herbert Muchamp was right. He is a brainstorm in architecture. And that's because he transgresses the frontiers between various fields. That's why. And I think Wolf Prix was right when he said, if you only think of architecture, you will only get architecture. That's why he promoted meta-architecture. And here we see something in that sense. Restoration, late Romantic villa in Sorrento, 1973. This is also very interesting. We have a so-called Romantic villa, but then we have a grotto, and it's this tension between two radically opposed worlds. And strangely, he anticipated what Ishigami does now, for example, and he's not the only one. Plus, there are now projects done by students of architecture at Harvard, at SciArc, at other important schools that explore an architecture that in some respects, if not in many respects, resemble the experiments of Gaetano Pesce. Church of Solitude, 1974. But again, this is not architecture per se, it's something in between various fields: architecture, design, stage design, and even literature to an extent. And, you know, figurative art. I mean, look at this landscape. You know, it is a landscape, but seen from above, it's you know, at least in this part, in the foreground is a human face. And I think you'll see his project for Chicago Tribune, very, very interesting. I think there are suggestions in his work that could be very fruitful to be developed. Project for Le Halles in Paris, 1979. I don't have great pictures, but you still see the hybrid visceral architecture that is kind of interesting. Certainly more interesting than you know, the predictable buildings that are built there. And look at the, you know, the excavations and the you know, subterranean spaces that he imagined, which are also you know, sabotaging the Cartesian. After all, Descartes was French. The Cartesian spirit, you know, which in some respects at least is rather hypocritical in France, I think. Look at this, you know, it's this visceralization of urbanism, and you know, these are architectural excavations that try to reveal a truth which you know, commonly the French hide away. They are not the only ones, of course. Now, the Chicago Tribune, it was done for the competition for the Chicago Tribune Tower, then the second edition, because the first one, where Adolf Loos and Walter Gropius participated, and it was one that with that neo-Gothic building. Now you see the proposal in 1980. This was the tower that Gaetano Pesce, you know, proposed, and I think, imagine it was built, it would have been by far the most personal building in Chicago. You know, this is something also to explore, you know, the monumentalization of fragments of the human face, maybe narrative references to who knows what, you know, we see the two hands there. And I mean, there are enigmas here, there are symbols, but I think, you know, if something like this was built, it would have been quite a building. It was not. A vertical loft. This is, you know, a little bit burlesque, but it is interesting, you know, it still is interesting and unusual. Now, Harvard Shelter from 1985, you know, less interesting, but it was built in the campus of the Harvard. I think the building in the background is the School of Architecture at Harvard. Maison des Enfants, the House of the Children, 1986. And indeed, it is the House of the Children. Nice. Even as a model, I think it's nice. Project for a bank, you'll see two different elevations. I don't know if he designed two banks or one with two different faces. This is one. Interesting animation of the facade, you know, it becomes a an unsettling mechanism, very sculptural. And then this is the other, it's either the other side of the same building or a different meditation on what a bank might be. But I have a feeling he was also rather sarcastic about the program itself. You know, banks try to portray themselves as being, receptacles of order and safety and so on, and righteousness even. But I think Gaetano Pesce knew better. Anyway, Sao Paulo Tower, 1988. Not bad. If we compare it with, most of the buildings, towers or not, this stands out because it is uninhibited and uninhibiting. You see the multiplicity that doesn't turn its back on unity, but remains highly, expressive of the variety of the entities or the individuals who compose this unity. Like in this case, each house within is identifiable and unique, although they work together. We don't build like this actually, but it might not be a bad idea to build like this. Now this is the largest building he built that I know of, is from 1989, built in Japan. And I think it's interesting. It has this, there is here also the ambivalence or the ambiguity that I mentioned. It's pop, it's modern, you don't quite know what he is thinking of, but I think he created a unique building, and is I think by any standards it is convincing. It's probably even rational and functioning well, but also in terms of architectonic expression, it is innovative, and it stands out, and it's not postmodern in that bothering sense that so many postmodern buildings are, although it was built exactly then. And an interesting idea, I mean, this was with 30 years before people began to, talk about vertical gardens and hanging vegetation on the facades of the buildings. This was done, about 30 years earlier. Also, I think he chose chromatically correctly, because you have the redness of the building and the green of the greenery of the plants. And this always guarantees a freshness, artistically speaking, chromatically speaking, the conflict between redness and greenness or green. Now we arrive at the second architect we pay homage to tonight. Unfortunately, he didn't build, or I didn't discover anything worth mentioning that he built, but he's a theoretician, a historian of architecture, and apparently he coined the terms critical regionalism. It wasn't Kenneth Frampton, it was Alexander Tzonis. Frampton borrowed the term from him. And he's a Greek architect, and I think even if he didn't create buildings, although he might have, but I don't know of, I think it's important to remember and to even talk about, architects who contribute to the architectural discourse through their thoughts, their writings, their essays, their books. So he is a Greek-born architect, author, and researcher. He has made contributions to architectural theory, history, and design cognition, bringing together scientific and humanistic approaches in a synthesis. Since 1975, he has been collaborating in most projects with Liane Lefebvre. In 1985, he founded and directed Design Knowledge Systems, DKS, a multidisciplinary research institute for the study of architectural theory and the development of design thinking tools at Technical University Delft. Tzonis is known for his work on the classical canon, history of the emergence and development of modern architectural thinking, creative design by analogy, and introducing the idea of critical regionalism. This is the man. And a few of his books, Classical Architecture, The Poetics of Order. You see he authored the book, this one and others, together with Liane Lefebvre. Here they are actually in this picture, you see both. I don't know who the gentleman on the right is. Then here they are again interviewed by someone. Liane Lefebvre is his partner in almost everything he does. Here she is. And this is a conference they organized tomorrow. Cities, lessons from history, playgrounds, and the third ecology. Interesting combination. History, playgrounds, and the third ecology. Clemson University School of Architecture Centennial Symposium, The Architecture of Regionalism in the Age of Globalization. Architecture of Regionalism in the Age of Globalization. It's a book, Peaks and Valleys in the Flat World, also by both of them. There you see the market built in Barcelona by Benedetta Tagliabue. Times of Creative Destruction, Shaping Buildings and Cities in the Late 20th Century, Alexander Tzonis and Liane Lefebvre. Now we arrive at the third architect that we wish him happy birthday. He is a little younger than both Tzonis and Gaetano Pesce, and an interesting designer and an interesting architect. And not just because of his beard, which is impressive, is like Marx, but that's about the only similarity with Karl Marx, certainly not the eyeglasses. Anyway, he is quite prolific. He built a large number of buildings, and he has his own office, and he apparently he is very, very famous as an industrial designer. Not just of some famous lamps that he designed, but many other things, and you'll see some of them. So here is the man. I understood he allowed his beard to grow so much because he wanted to differentiate himself from his brother, from his twin brother. Anyway, I like this picture of him, although it seems to be, I don't know, a little bit flattened or something. But, you know, the way he sits there, you know, like almost like a, I don't know, abandoned child, or I don't know, it's something nice about it, I think. And also the state in which the building itself is, you see, is not refurbished, is not, it's a building which was attacked by the elements and is as fragile as everything else in this life. So he was born today in 1951, an Italian architect and designer, born in Ferrara and graduated in architecture from Florence. During the period of radical and experimental architecture, he was a prominent figure in movements such as Cavar, Studio Alchimia, and Memphis. De Lucchi has designed lamps and furniture for well-known Italian European companies such as Artemide, Olivetti, alias Unifor, Hermes, and Alessi. For Olivetti, he was director of design from 1988 to 2002 and developed experimental projects for Compaq Computers, Philips, Siemens, and Vitra. During this period, he developed a number of theories on the evolution of workplaces. He has designed and restored buildings in Japan for NTT, in Germany for Deutsche Bank, in Switzerland for Novartis, and in Italy for Enel, Olivetti, Piaggio, Poste Italiane, and Telecom Italia. In 1999, he was appointed to renovate a number of Enel, the Italian electricity company, power plants. For Deutsche Bank, Deutsche Bundesbahn, Enel, Poste Italiane, Telecom Italia, Hera, Intesa, San Paolo, and other Italian and foreign banks, he collaborated on the development of corporate image, introducing technical and aesthetic innovation into the workplace. So now you'll see some drawings by him. He seems to have, it's kind of strange. I mean, these two men, these two Italian architects born on the same day, but a few years apart, they do seem to have something in common. And maybe my attraction to pay homage to architects based on the day of their birth, not necessarily on the year of their birth, has to do with this fact that although I have no knowledge about astrology, but I do believe that there might be some resemblances here and there, you know, that if you are born on the same day with another person, you might have certain things in common, although I could be contradicted, I guess, by facts. I don't know, but I have a feeling that there is some, or there could be some meaning in analyzing you know, the works of two people who were born years apart, but on the same day. Anyway, he's different from Gaetano Pesce, but he still seems to have something in common. You know, like this, you just don't quite know. Is he serious? Is he half serious? Is he joking? But as you saw, he, you know, he has a very prolific activity working with incredibly, you know, well-established institutions. But his drawing, this is a chapel actually, and I forgot to include it in the presentation. I looked at it, I didn't like it so much, but now that I look at the drawing, I should have included it. I included other buildings, but not this little chapel that he built in Germany, in Bavaria. But if you search on the web, on Google Images, the Lucchi Chapel, Bavaria, you'll see it. I was a little bit bothered, but of course I am subjective, you know, that he declared, as opposed to Raphael Moneo, that architecture is an object, that the building is an object. And Raphael Moneo apparently said in what I read that buildings are not objects. And I kind of agree with Raphael Moneo. But De Lucchi seems to be convinced that, well, of course, it also depends to an extent what we mean by objects and within what limitations and so on. These are some studies for a chair that he actually built. If you psychoanalyze a little bit, in an amateurish way, you could say, well, this is about someone who has a schismatic nature. Maybe he's depicting his own twin condition. The seat has two backs. Maybe this seat is, meditation in terms of in the field of chairs on his own condition that he has a twin brother. I think that, Tadao Ando also has a twin brother. And I think this situation where you have a twin sibling creates some crisis of identity that could be very fruitful creatively, but could also be a source of anxiety, probably. Anyway, so this is the man working, I think, from home. He does look a little bit like a man who knows something about troubles. We all suffer in this world. He wouldn't be the only one, of course. So we are still looking at some drawings, and then we'll look at his buildings, at the number of his buildings. He is very well regarded. I mean, I read on Domus, a very appreciative article on him, and he is considered, truly very important and accomplished architect and designer. Architecture. And we'll end with his, furniture designs. Il Tronco office building in Germany from 2009 to 2012. It might appear at the first glance that it's, despite the curve, it's a rather predictable and banal building. Well, it's not so. It has a certain elegance, plus look what is happening here in the middle. The facade. I mean, there is a problematization of this facade, not only because of the curvature in plan, but also it starts here from a straight line and it arrives at a curved profile at the top. So you'll see another picture, I think it is interesting, and it tells you something about, his aims. It's he could have been easily the not the slave, but well, in a way, the slave of Cartesianism. But because of this irrational gesture here, he escapes that. So he brings unreason. You see it very well here. It's the distortion that makes the building assume another dimension. And I think that is interesting. Earth stations. Now, these are interesting too. These are, we talk about moon stations, Mars stations, but he proposes Earth stations. And he does so for this utopian project. The idea to create Earth stations is, I think, interesting, because instead of, it seems also from what I read, he is very conscious and very appreciative of gravity, of the force of gravity. So obviously he loves the Earth. He's, he understands that the Earth still has a lot to offer. And I take it that indirectly this project, utopian project, is a commentary on those who want to leave the Earth. So Earth stations are active architectures that form networks which are easy to reach and are built in places that form or regenerate urban and infrastructural nodes. They respond to our evolving lifestyles, where artificial intelligence increasingly frees men from bureaucratic and repetitive tasks, establishing an opportunity to create places that express personal freedom and harness the enormous potential of technology. They are designed to respect our environment, and by definition, everything that happens inside continues to impact their evolution and adaptation. They are organized to promote walking and casual encounters, which is the best method of creating ideas and interaction. They are places that dissolve traditional notions of ownership and instead help spread shared and circular economies. They come from exploring humanistic qualities in architecture, which are influenced by atmospheric and sensorial experiences rather than purely the formal or visual definition of space. They promote a continuous stream of mobility and communication that inspire formal and informal events supported by workshops and technologies for new forms of expression and production. Anyway, this text is a little bit too didactic and too, I don't know, I'm a little bit suspicious of it. Now, here, unfortunately, I should have placed, that's how I found this material. The explanations come after the picture. The mode station, not in for this one, but the next ones, the mode station is located in a natural environment and creates an immense covered meeting place at the intersection of timeless paths and routes. It is a free-flowing circus-like enclosure and is partially submerged into the landscape to reduce its scale from outside and help protect its internal climate. The internal conical structures form agora-like spaces that use advanced technologies to support and broadcast events and strategic thinking. The mode station is for the evolution of broadcasting media. You know, I think if we are to learn anything from the Lucchi, is here we have an architect who collaborates with very big firms, who builds, who sells, because he sells his designs. They are built, you know, chairs and tables and lamps and so on. But he also allocates a lot of energy for a creativity of an utopian nature. And I think this is something to admire. So the mountain station is this one. Perched on top of a monolithic natural form, the mountain station creates a dynamic space arrived at by a cable car from below. Its draped outer membrane reflects and breathes, creating a sheltered internal climate that responds to any extreme external weather. With breathtaking views and a relaxed layout, it encourages casual encounters between those who seek to live urban life and find inspiration from the landscape and tranquility of the mountains. The mountain station provides spaces literally for summit conferences. Now this is, I'll come back to the picture because the text is after the picture, but in order to understand the picture, we should read the text. The floating station is a raft anchored near a coastal city where work and social connections arise through the idea of human diversity and the dynamics of exchange. Reached by pontoon or boat, it creates a new form of metropolitan island with an undulating, translucent urban skyline. As a modular composition of elements, the soul can adapt and reconfigure in relation to evolving technology, specific events, and different expressions of human contact. The floating soak station is a market of ideas. So anyway, this is another dream he had. This one, let's see what he says. The crown station is a double bridge whose regal form and commanding position express a sense of triumph and intellect. Its oval plan not only connects adjacent cliffs, but also provides alternative inner paths around groups of event and study spaces. As a metaphorical bridge, it houses a printed and digital library, allowing you to connect your own ideas to those of others. The crown station is an evolution of the library. Is this one. Strangely how he put it there, you know, very precariously sitting there actually. Okay, the next one, which is this one, city station surrounded by major transit roads. The city station is composed of a ring of craft and digital laboratories in which to experiment, innovate, and display different production philosophies and techniques formed from interlocking tented cones. This architecture favors controlled natural light and faceted views, which provide glimpses to the outer urban and inner natural environment. Each cone can be arranged and equipped to support artistic and digital design innovation methods. The city station innovates the idea of workshops and laboratories. Um, yes, of course, he's a dreamer. Look at the madness of highways underneath. Uh, okay, another one. The cloud station is an atmospheric architecture that offers a complete contrast with its surrounding vehicle-defined landscape. It has a billowed and organic composition of soft roofs which can be programmed to create a variety of internal settings and micro-ambiances. I don't know, these texts are a little bit too, as I said, didactic and something that turns me off about them, sorry. Anyway, this is what it is. And you see the ocean of cars around the kind of medieval, architectural structure there, surrounded by the desert, actually. It's certainly not a paradisiacal garden, it's a desert. The desert populated by countless cars. Okay, and now Unicredit Pavilion in Milano, which he built, is the building, the rather horizontal building. And I don't know, I don't find it, strikingly, interesting. It's okay, but it's, I don't know. We have seen things like this. Very, very intricate technical drawings and details, actually. I'm impressed. That's perhaps because I was never able to do something like this, but I appreciate them. Because it is creation here, but also technical knowledge, know-how, it seems. I don't know about this huge screen hanged here, but on the, it seems like an afterthought. It's not integrated into the building, I think. But maybe that was the idea of the clients, not his. And some interiors, well, what can we say? They're okay, but not more than okay. Not even here, I would say. Although the ceiling has a certain, fluidity. This space, though, seems more interesting, like a, versatile space for all kinds of gatherings and events. Now, his architecture company is this one, AMDL Circle, and that's his name, actually. A is actually written initially, and most of the time it's a small a, and then MDL is his own name, Michele de Lucchi, Circle. And he works with a few other architects, but he founded this firm. This is more so-called traditional, but there are levels of inventions here in Tyrol, in Austria. I almost see some, remote references to Rudolf Steiner a little bit. here, and I think it's a good complex of buildings there on top of the mountain. They used a lot of wood here, I don't know if the forests were so happy, but I'm sure they didn't ask the forest what its feelings were. And this is solid wood. These are chairs designed by him. They are kind of interesting. We'll see more designs by him at the end. Well, it's still the triumph of man, the triumph of the human beings here. Whatever the architect might say or other people, this is the architecture, the abode of man, who thinks that he can cut all the forest down if he's supposed to build for himself very comfortable lodgings. I think this conception should receive some challenge from us today. Okay, so everything is fine and luxurious and peaceful. A law court in Georgia. He built in Georgia a few things, and I understood he was even made an honorary citizen of Georgia because of his work in Georgia. Now, I don't know. I mean, this architecture is not truly enticing me too much, but yeah, it's another tower. Okay. The proud symbol of progress, I guess, but it's a progress I don't quite believe in any longer, and not expressed in this form. I wish him, though, happy birthday, although I don't quite like the tower. Now a pavilion for Expo in Milan, which is, quite a large building. And this is how he started his initial sketch. And then, other sketches. I like these drawings by him, they show a sensitive soul, I think, to an extent. Strange, this fence here, which is, so, old-fashioned, but anyway. Maybe this was the idea, not to challenge the building with a, impressive fence. I like his drawings because they are not mainstream. They are not, necessarily seductive or made to please. They are, studies. And this is the building, resolutely modern. It's like a modern citadel. I think it's good. Okay, now we arrive at this building. Well, not really building, some structures. I only have two pictures, I think, that he worked on with the students from that academy, you know, proposals for the suburbs of Milan, you know, for a market. And I think they're interesting, you know, I mean, I don't know, you know, it's the attempt of design to contribute to the social life, doesn't matter what. And this is both admirable and a little bit questionable, because again, we are cutting down trees in order to do what? You know, make the products even more sellable, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, but you know, they have silhouettes that are, you know, it's a, you know, a rural little Manhattan, so to speak here. Anyway, now a shopping mall, quite large, built by him and his office. A, you see, with a small a standing for architect, Michele de Lucchi. So Il Centro. And Centro, it is indeed a large shopping mall for the glory of today's life. I shop, therefore I am. And what can we do? You know, the bigger, the better. This is what Engels would say, and this is what Rem Koolhaas at one moment would have said, and this is what the Lucchi says right now. Well, I don't know if he thinks in this way. You saw his private home is very, you know, low key, and you know, but this is the supermarket. What can we do? Huge. Look at that car. You know, it's progress here. It's the fantasy of living like the gods on this earth. And that's how supermarkets are all over the world. You know, it's capitalism at its best and at its worst at the same time. Consumption, consumption, and again consumption. And then, of course, production, production, and again production. And there it goes. Everything is fine, you know, as long as you shop. The abundance is unbelievable. But can this abundance remove our anxieties, existential anxieties? I'm not so sure. I remember once I watched a TV program from the City University of New York, and a student said, I want to change the world, but because I cannot change the world, I will change my socks. And I think this is what all this, you know, frenzy of shopping is about. You know, we would like to change the world. Maybe we would like to change ourselves, but we can't. So then we change our socks, meaning we buy another pair of socks or whatever. But the building is okay, of course. It functions, it's clean, it's decent, it's air conditioned, but ignores all the problems outside of it and maybe inside of it too. Anyway, this is the plan, you know, sensitively done, you know, for a supermarket. And the brutality of the comfortable brutality of the escalators is for all to see. I say brutality because escalators, doesn't matter how architecture is around the escalators, escalators always look the same. They are all, you know, the foreign bodies within the, you know, more or less imaginative interior space. And hello, we say hello now to the supermarket, and we go to his designs, and with this we'll end our meeting today. So here are some strange objects, you know, that, you know, some of them, you know, proclaim the joie de vivre, the power of play. I don't know how innocent it is, but this is the famous, you know, lamp that he designed, which is actually very expensive. And it's kind of paradoxical, you know, you design a functional lamp that is very expensive. I don't think, I think it's a certain perversion here. Then we have these objects which are clearly affected by postmodernism. But these colors, even these colors are coming back with strong force, you like it or not. I don't like these colors, but they are back. If you look at the most innovative projects in architecture today, not just design, you'll see these colors all the time. Here are some designs by him. You know, this chair on the right is the first chair from 1983. It's quite famous. I have seen it many times. It doesn't look to me like a very comfortable chair. What are those black spheres on both arms of the chair, you know? I find them rather frivolous and uncomfortable. But I would rather buy the chair on the left from 2001, you know, made of wood. And yeah, sorry for the wood, but otherwise the design seems to be more acceptable than these two chairs, or this one. Even here you can see the duality, you know, the twin brothers somehow in this chair, which is different from the one with two backs that we saw. This is another kind of interesting piece. You know, in its, you know, deviation from verticality seems to say that, you know, life indeed can be less resolute in terms of verticality and horizontality, but you can still use the structure to place the books and flowers and objects and whatever. This is also kind of an interesting, I don't know, vertical shelving system or whatever it is. There is I would say, a level of innovation here. And another chair, you know, kind of interesting. That backing is, I never saw a chair with its backing quite like this. And, you know, there were so many designs of chairs. So it's not easy to do a chair that within the limits of convention has a part of it that is so, you know, a little bit different. Anyway, this is also, I would say, you know, rather interesting. Well, there is a certain demagogy in terms of using the wood in the back all the way, you know, like that. But what can we do? We human beings have to design in order to consume, and get out of our own boredom. That is, could be a problem. And, but it's an interesting chair, this one, I think. And not too divorced from what we call tradition, really. Another exasperated shelving system. Why not? And this is an interesting bench with those triangular alcoves, you know, on both sides. You know, of course, there were many benches done like this, but I didn't see one with, you know, with triangular spaces, although it seems feasible and, you know, almost acceptable. That's it. Thank you very much.